Jesus freak here, and I was watching the video of an ex-Jehovah Witness who answered some questions, and he had answered a question about the use of Lord in capital letters as a substitute for the tetragrammaton, or 4 Hebrew letters. And he got the gist of it, but he didn't get the details. Now, as you may be familiar, for the most part, when the tetragrammaton appears in Hebrew, in the King James Bible and in most of its successors, it is translated as either Lord or God in all capital, or more correctly, small capital letters. Occasionally, it's translated as Jehovah. Now, the Jews had a hang-up over pronouncing the name. It's old enough of a hang-up that Aramaic paraphrases of the Pentateuch changed the commandment about not using the Lord's name in vain to pronouncing it at all. And in fact, this led them to replace it with the Hebrew word for Lord, something which they eventually wound up having hang-ups over on top of that. And they won't even say that anymore. But this led, in the Greek translation, they originally just left it in Hebrew with the letters. But at some point they decided to swap that out for the word for Lord. The Latin translations did the same thing. Except in one case. For some reason, they used the Hebrew word for Lord instead of the Latin word for Lord in Exodus 6:3, where the Vulgate translation, if you translated that further back into English, it'll say, I am the Lord who appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty. And my name, Adonai, I did not tell them. And this is actually one of the places where in the King James Version, they actually use Jehovah. Jehovah, as it is a hybrid. It is a Latinized transliteration of the tetragrammaton with the wrong vowels, because when they added vowel markers, I think it was either in the 6th or 9th century AD, they added the vowel markers. They deliberately added the wrong ones for the tetragrammaton to mark that the name wasn't supposed to be pronounced as it was. As for the pronunciation Yahweh, as I understand, that was the pronunciation that the Samaritans used. And a form of it was actually, some people described this as the pronunciation the Samaritans used in Greek. They wrote it as iota, alpha, beta, epsilon, if I remember correctly. Because there's no J, V, or W in Greek. They used Sometimes they used Omicron, Upsilon, and sometimes they used Beta. And they've used both to spell the name. I think Josephus said that he knew the name, wasn't allowed to say it, but that from his perspective it was 4 vowels. And you could write, I guess, Yahweh is 4 Greek vowels. I have my preferences towards avoiding pronouncing the name myself. Admittedly, it's out of superstition. The same superstition which led Jews not to pronounce it. Now, the use of the small caps, if you can believe this was introduced by William Tyndale in 1530 when he was translating the Pentateuch. He opted to follow the standard, as the Vulgate did, of translating the name as Lord, but to distinguish it from other uses of Lord, he put Lord in small capitals. Now, he didn't exactly do this consistently, and his successors didn't do it until the King James Version, where they tried to be consistent about it. And since the King James Version took off like it did, that kind of became the standard in English. And some other Bible translations in other languages, I believe the Staten-Vertaling and the Dutch, which is like the Dutch KJV, did the same thing with the Dutch word for Lord. The Reign of Valera opted to use a Spanish transcription of Jehovah, but some other translations, like, for example, La Biblia de las Americas, puts Señor in small caps. I've adopted the nickname of the Tyndale Tetragrammaton for using Lord in small caps because, well, it translates to Tetragrammaton. It's 4 letters, which is what Tetragrammaton means, and the usage of the small capitals goes back to William Tyndale. So there's your explanation on that matter. Jesus freak out.